Welcome back, welcome back. Today we're doing a rogue hardcore poison build. I'm going to try to be quick here, but we know these builds, they take some time. It takes some time to really go in deep dive in there and explain some stuff, why we chose this over this, and what customizations you might choose to make and why you might make them, all that good stuff. On the topic of aspects, we're looking at this right now. We see the skills I have. You'll notice one thing, there's no ultimate. You can choose an ultimate. We'll get to that. We'll definitely get into that and what customization choices you can make on Paragon and skill tree, all that good stuff. So aspects, they're aspects that you might have seen on other characters, like damage going to leave, give you a barrier, absorbs damage. This is all about hardcore, by the way, so it's all about staying alive. You can make adjustments for softcore. You could take the same exact build and say, okay, this aspect's for staying alive, this passive's for staying alive. Maybe I'm going to take these out and go for more damage. Certainly could do that. Definitely an option. But this is for hardcore. I think it's very easy to take a hardcore build, make it softcore, but it's very hard to take a softcore build, make it hardcore. There's a lot more changes going that way. So anyway, continuing on, Dark Shroud Shadow. When you crit, that helps reduce damage you take. Those Dark Shrouds. We have a unique in here. Obviously, that's ideal. We're not saying that we're going to get this, but ideally, you would eventually get this at some point. But we don't know for sure. Basic skills grant 20% damage reduction. That's great. Crowd control. If you become injured while you're crowd controlled, you gain unstoppable. This is huge. This will keep you alive. Definitely keep you alive. You don't want to be stunned to death. You're spamming your potion button, trying to use your potion, and you're stuck there. You're just waiting for that to end, and you die before you get a chance to use the potion. Seen that happen. Not fun. Dealing direct damage to enemies affected by your trap skills. This build does have a trap. It has a chance to make them vulnerable. That's good. We also have vulnerable specific stuff in this build, so we do want enemies to be vulnerable as much as possible. Making enemy vulnerable has 30 to 50% chance to grant 3% increased critical strike chance for 3 seconds up to 9%. When a Dark Shroud Shadow would be removed, you trigger an explosion around yourself. That's if enemies are close, you're going to do damage to them. This is completely optional. There are definitely other options to choose from. In fact, personally, I would go with something like that would help maybe dodge, something that increase survivability, because I'm all about that that survivability stuff, but it's completely up to you. If you want that AoE, great. If not, that's okay. The range on that is decent. I've seen a little bit of a leak thing. It's not bad, so it's a good AoE. Imbuement skill. It has 20 to 40% increased potency against vulnerable enemies. We have an imbuement skill in the build. We are going to be applying vulnerable, like I said. That's going to be huge. Basic skills increase attack speed. The attack speed is great because that helps us apply vulnerability to enemies and more damage, more energy coming in, all that stuff. That's good stuff. When casting an imbuement skill, you trigger an imbued explosion around yourself. That's poison imbuement. This one and this one here are a little bit more melee oriented, but there will be times when enemies are close that can help. Good stuff. All right, moving on to the skill tree. Forceful Arrow we went with because it does apply vulnerable. It's a nice option. There are absolutely other options. You could use Heartseeker if you'd like instead, but we like this one because it applies vulnerable. Every third cast of Forceful Arrow additionally has a 15% increased critical strike chance. That's great. Forceful Arrow pierces through vulnerable enemies. Jumping back to gear and skills, sorry about this. Combo points. Wanted to talk about this. Combo points, inner sight of preparation. We don't have an ultimate in this build. You can put an ultimate. I'm going to show you how if you really want one. I'm going to show you how to do it. It's very easy. Inner sight. That's okay as well. You get an unlimited energy, but I'm going to go combo points because it makes rapid fire incredibly strong. You get more arrows and more damage with your combo points. 6, 7, 8. I believe it goes up to 8. Yes, based off combo points. 8 arrows fire that do more damage, so you utilize your combo points to do even more single target, and honestly, it's kind of multi-target damage as well, because it'll kill enemies in a straight line and hit the following ones afterwards, and then you can imbue off that as well and use your poison imbuement. More critical strike chance, so you'll be doing a lot of crits, you'll be doing a lot of vulnerables, a lot of damage to vulnerable enemies, and then we did... this is completely optional. If you think you're going to do a good job at keeping enemies away from you, don't take sturdy. There will be times that enemies do close the gap and they do melee you even as a ranged character, and we don't know what enemies are waiting for us in the game. There might be a lot of enemies that charge, then they close the gap very fast and they melee. I would take this personally. It's a lot of damage reduction. I would definitely take it. And this class does not have a great deal of damage reduction if you don't have your shadow orbs, your dark shrouds going up, which hopefully you do, but we'll go over that. Damage reduction is huge for the class. Critical strike an enemy gives you a little bit of movement speed. That's a completely optional point. Rapid fire, you could also change that for penetrating shot. There is no requirement to use rapid fire at all. You want to use penetrating shot? Go for it. I'm kind of torn between the two. So you're probably just feeling the same way. Rogues probably are. You probably tested both of them, and if not, they are pretty similar. Penetrating shot, it'll go through every enemy in a line. It'll do a lot of damage, and you can poison imbue or any imbuement, and it'll have that imbuement effect on every target it hits as it flies through. Same thing happens with rapid fire, except it's not gonna pierce through enemies. It's gonna hit the first enemy and it's gonna stop. It's gonna do damage to them, but you will do a lot more single target DPS with this, and there's enough multi-target utilities in this build to use rapid fire. When you go up against a tough boss, you go up against a world boss, a tough elites, act-ending bosses, dungeon-ending bosses, you're going to probably regret not having rapid fire if you have penetrating shot. Your damage might be high enough, your poison might be incredible, that you could make use of penetrating shot, sure. And that's the beauty of this build. You can make simple changes. You can say, I feel good right now. I don't really need more single target DPS. I'm gonna pull this out. I'm gonna go with penetrating shot. Make my world clearing a little bit easier, and it's still good enough to kill bosses at a rate I'm happy with. Go for it. Weapon mastery. I think this is a must-have. Critical strike damage. We do have a lot of crits if we have crossbows, high crit strike damage, and then bows. We are again going to keep enemies vulnerable. We do a lot more damage to vulnerable enemies. Swords and daggers. We're not melee. We don't really care about that. Now, concealment. This is the one ability I'd say you can drop if you really want your ultimate. The reason why we have concealment is it helps us survive, big time. It helps us stealth. We use it, we go into stealth, we get away from enemies, we put some distance on them, and then continue our onslaught of ranged attacks, right? You can use it to wait out some cooldowns. Maybe you're waiting a couple seconds on that poison trap, you use it, wait a couple seconds, drop it. But the main use of it is it gives you unstoppable. Talked about this a little bit earlier with the aspect. If you are stunned and you have no way to get out, that sucks. We do have the aspect that'll help us when we're at real low health. If we get injured while we're at crowd control, it'll proc unstoppable, but this is an extra backup of that, and you can use it immediately. You get stunned, you can use this immediately, and the game does a good job of telling you, hey idiot, use this ability, because it'll gray out the rest of your bar. You're stunned, you can't use any of your abilities, but concealment will be the one that's still lit up. It still shows its yellow icon saying, hey, you can use this, bro, use it, and it'll get you out of your crowd control. It'll proc unstoppable. Again, this is a build around hardcore. If you are going to change this for a softcore build, remove concealment. Remove concealment and grab Shadow Clone. You can even do that in a hardcore build. However, it is a 60-second cooldown, and it does trigger unstoppable. But it might not be up when you need it, because it's a 60-second cooldown versus a 20-second. If you take Shadow Clone, grab Preparation. Every 100 energy you spend reduces your ultimate cooldown by 4 seconds. Using an ultimate resets the cooldown of your other skills. The reason why I would say grab Preparation is because it helps increase the likelihood that your ultimate will be available when you are crowd controlled. Right? That's really what it's about. It's another option for breaking out of crowd control. Yes, it will increase your DPS. However, like I said, if you're taking that ultimate, you're going to lose combo points, which is going to increase the DPS of rapid fire. That is a big portion of your damage. So you are losing a little bit of damage there to gain damage with the use of the ultimate to take Preparation. Sure, you can keep combo points and go for the ultimate. I absolutely would not recommend that in hardcore. You want to do it softcore, go for it. You have combo points for more damage, you have the ultimate for more damage, and you're giving up on concealment. The modifier for concealment is we gain 40 energy the second we use it, helps us use more abilities, and then we guarantee a vulnerable whenever we use an ability coming out of concealment. The other option is a guaranteed crit. Go for it. Whatever option you want, this really is up to you. But one thing we really can't do is kind of increase the likelihood of vulnerability with gear, but we can increase our crit chance with gear. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. It is what it is, the vulnerability chance, while crit strike can still build depending on your gear. Moving on. Dark Shroud. Huge ability. Highly recommend maxing this out. I'm going to butcher the math here. 8% times 5, 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, right? 40% damage reduction because you get 8% damage reduction per shadow. You can earn more shadows as well over 5 because of the aspects. The aspects we have allow us to go over 5. We can earn additional ones. So that's 40% damage reduction if we just go with the 5. If you put all 5 points in, I know 8% to 11%, 11.2% doesn't sound huge, but keep in mind it's per active shadow. So that 11.2%, what is that? That's 56%, right? That's 56% damage reduction versus the 40%. That's 16% additional damage reduction. I would highly recommend maxing this. For hardcore, again, softcore, do what you want. Dark Shrouds have a 10% chance to not be consumed. And for each active shadow from Dark Shroud, you get movement speed increase. The other option is you get crit strike chance. We have a lot of crit chance in the build, so we don't necessarily need this. But if you want to zoop, you want to go fast, zoop, grab it. Grab the movement speed thing. Again, optional. A lot of stuff you can adjust in this build. I'm not going to give you a direct answer on everything because you can customize it for what you want. You want the crit chance? Go for it. Movement speed can also help you stay alive. Helps you get out of AoE attacks. So gotta look at that as well. 1 point in here for damage to healthy enemies and then more damage to vulnerable enemies. Poison Trap. That's maxed out, does crazy poison damage, knocks down enemies when it triggers, and then a 30% chance to reset imbuement skills, or the other option is 10% more poison damage. I'm going to go with the imbuement skill reset. Again, adjust that as you see fit. Imbuement skill, crazy poison damage from this as well, and it's very important we keep our enemies poisoned, because I'm going to show you that in a second. Poison imbuement's poison duration is increased by 1 second. Critical strikes with poison imbued skills deal 75% increased poisoning damage, and we're going to have a lot of that because they're a crit. Lucky hit, poison imbued skills have up to 30% chance to apply double the amount of poisoning damage over time. You can do that, but we don't have a lot of lucky hit increasing stuff, like in the Paragon tree and such, so I would highly recommend this one. And that would combo really well with the crit chance increase here. You could do that. Now, the reason why we want to keep our enemies poisoned is this section right here. 9% increased damage to poison enemies. Poisoned enemies deal 15% less damage. That's huge. And then we get attack speed for each enemy you've poisoned. So you can get a lot of 15% increased attack speed. You'll have that up almost all the time. And then we went with while moving, you get energy regen. So as you're kiting around, you get your energy back. You can use your abilities quicker. And then this last section here. This is, you pretty much got 2 options. You can use Victimize here, which will help when you're dealing damage to vulnerable enemies. There's a 30% chance to cause an explosion, dealing 23% of the original damage to them. So this will help trigger a lot of AoE explosions to help you clear out crowds. The other option is this one. Dealing direct damage to an enemy affected by a trap skill has up to a 25% chance to reduce the active cooldowns of your trap skills by 20%, or drop a cluster of exploding stun grenades to deal 40% total physical damage and stun enemies for 0.5 seconds. Choice is completely yours. It doesn't matter what you want to do. You can do either. And honestly, I'm probably leaning a little bit more towards exposure. And the reason why is because it still does a little bit of AoE damage. It won't proc as often as this one, but it does a little bit more AoE damage, and it gets your trap up quicker. That trap is absurd, the amount of damage it does. So I recommend it. Definitely recommend going towards the exposure side, but Victimize is certainly an option. We are at 14 minutes almost. All right, moving on. Paragon node. I will explain some of what I've done, but I'm going to go through it real fast because I don't want to make this a super long video because, you won't gain much from it. If it's too long, you won't watch it to the end. I know you guys. Life, we grabbed this side as well as this side because they both have life. Increased survivability is always great. Damage, survivability, resistance, we grab both sides. We run up here. Wielding a ranged weapon, you take 10% reduced damage. We took this right off the bat because we want to stay alive for hardcore. We need 40 dexterity to make that active, and then for every 5 dexterity, we get 2% increased damage. We have 20 dexterity here, 25, 30, 35, 40. So we do have that active. We do have an extra skill point. I didn't spend it. You could spend it here if you'd like at the end. And there's a lot of that at the end of the game. You will be going back to if you level your glyph up to max, which by the way, you can level glyphs. If you didn't know, you can level glyphs to the point where, like, instead of every 5 dexterity gives 2% damage, I believe it goes something like every 5 dexterity gives 5% or 7.5% damage, some crazy amounts for some of them. And that gets to the point where it makes the blue nodes actually look worse. The 5% damage is not as big as an additional 5 dexterity. This would actually end up being more than a single magic node at the end if you have a max glyph. So at the very end of the game, if you happen to have a glyph that you're leveling and you're doing a good job, you're still surviving in hardcore, you level your glyph high enough, there are going to be options where you say, you know what, I'm gonna rip the points out of this, forget this, I'm going to get more dexterity in this area. And then you could certainly do that. But we're going to assume that no one's getting max glyphs right off the bat. You're leveling, you want to know where to put your points to as you're leveling, right? As you're leveling, where you're putting your points. And then there could be like a final build where you see it more like you grab every dexterity node in this red range. But for the sake of leveling and making it simple, that what should you do while you're leveling? This is what I recommend. You're grabbing our damage to vulnerable enemies. We went with the node exploit weakness here. We're grabbing damage to vulnerable enemies. We are damage reduction from vulnerable enemies. And we grabbed the legendary node. Whenever you deal damage to a vulnerable enemy, you get increased damage up to 15%. Damage to elites and movement speed when you kill elites. Cold resist and life. Then we jump on over to tricks of the trade node, or whatever you want to call it, grid. Damage to distant enemies. And damage reduction from distant enemies. Huge. Definitely helps us stay alive, helps us do more damage. Good stuff, right? Up here we got shadow resist and life. Can't beat that. More damage to elites, which are going to be our toughest things to fight. That works on bosses and world bosses. 50% bonus to all rare nodes within range. And 10% reduced physical damage from enemies that are vulnerable. Again, huge vulnerable build. We're applying that like crazy. That's going to help us a lot. We didn't grab the legendary node in this one. It's an option if you want. I don't agree with this at all for our build because we're not using cutthroat skills because that's melee stuff. So we're not going over here. And a lot of legendaries you'll find that you don't grab because they're just not great. They're not great. This one's probably pretty good. This one's good, but it's really far out of the way to grab. And to grab this, you're giving up essentially the last glyph in the tree. So if you have questions, why the heck didn't you take that? You give up the last glyph, which you can level them, like we said, and they get stronger than any legendary that pretty much exists, with like the exception of one of the barbarian ones that like gives you fortify. That's incredible. Anyway, moving over, damage over time reduction. That's to us, so we take less damage from damage over time. Resistance to elements. We run over to non-physical damage and imbuement cooldown, so we do huge poison damage with these. Helps us do more poison damage and more imbuement. This is optional. This is about potion healing. We don't really have a way to restore health other than potions, so we got to be careful there. Potion healing effectiveness could be very, very helpful, but the reason why we really took all those nodes is because we also boost them by 50% with a rare glyph, and as you level that glyph, that goes up to like 195% boost to all rare nodes in the range. So something to consider. It'll really, really make your potions super efficient and make sure they heal you essentially to full health. So you could pull points out of this and put it elsewhere if you'd like. I'd recommend grabbing the 10 dexterity, 4% healing at least, and then maybe you could pull points out like that if you really wanted to. Completely up to you. This is all about imbuement damage, which we like. We will be utilizing the poison imbuement. Moving on up, that was the Eldritch Bounty Tree. This is the No Witness one. We're moving on up. Crowd control reduction, damage over time reduction. We don't want to be stunned to death, so this definitely helps with that. Helps reduce damage we take from dots. This one's life. At the very end, we grab life. We grab another glyph. For every 5 intelligence purchased within range, 2% increased damage to poisoned targets, and then poisoning damage effects last 33% longer. We got to make sure we have 25 intelligence in this range. 5, 10, 15, and then we got the 2/7, so we're good. That ends up being 29, so we definitely get that. 10% damage, pure damage, some intelligence there, more damage nodes. It is a build with high health, high survivability, and very high damage. 42% increased life from the tree. It's some decent resist. We have reduced crowd control, reduced dot damage taken, damage reduction from vulnerable enemies, damage reduction from distant enemies. This will be a very efficient hardcore build, I promise you that. I'm going to include this in the link below. If you have any questions, concerns, anything you do different, any choices you made that might be different than how I did it, let me know. Like I said, there are many choices. You could customize the build to work the way you want. You don't have to follow this exact thing. And if you have any questions, what do you think about taking this instead? What do you think about doing this instead? Let me know. Happy to go over it. Happy to talk about it. I made a lot of these builds on stream over the course of like 5 hours. It was like a 5 or 6 hour stream. It was just me talking straight about builds. But anyway, This is a 20-minute mark. Not bad, right, for a build video? Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll be uploading many, many, many more. If you guys like this content, let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later!